Hi, my name is Anil Lewis. I'm the Executive Director of Blindness Initiatives for the National Federation of the Blind, the most transformative membership organization of blind Americans. The unemployment rate of blind Americans has hovered around 70% for decades. The root remains the fears and misconceptions that people have around the capacity of blind people and the lack of knowledge around the tools that blind people use to be competitive every day. Through this series, we hope to educate both blind job seekers and employers about the variety of different careers that blind people are actively pursuing today and the tools and strategies they use to be competitive on the job. We're hoping that this will help put a dent in the unemployment rate and create greater opportunities for blind people. So let's take a look at where the blind work.
Of the blind is committed to securing equity and opportunity for all blind people as it relates to employment. Blindness is not the characteristic that defines you or your future. Each day we raise expectations because we know that low expectations create obstacles between blind people and their dreams. It is our collective power, determination, and diversity that achieves aspirations for all blind people. And one of the ways we do that is through this webinar. I would like to welcome everyone to our Where the Blind Work webinar. And tonight it is all about science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, also known as STEM. So welcome everyone. We are so happy to have you all. And I'm getting a little bit of feedback from someone's background.
Oh, it's probably way too quick.
Yes, so please mute if you are able.
That's what I didn't do. I think that's what I didn't do.
What?
All right. All right, perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, so a few housekeeping rules before we get started. Everyone, we are asking that everyone stay on mute, especially during our presentation or presenters' presentations this evening. We will try our hardest to make sure that there is a question and answer portion for participants to ask questions at the end. We will do some hand raising and also have the chat open at that time. So you will have multiple ways of asking questions. Also, once we get our captioner set up, we will have the one cat in the chat. So you will be able to access captioning that way for those who need closed captioning. And the final piece of this is if you do have questions and we don't get to your questions before the end of the webinar, you can email us at employment@nfb.org and we'll make sure that your questions get passed along to our panelists this evening and make sure you get a response. And I'll make sure to have that reminder at the end. So again, welcome to everyone and let's get started. And so we said tonight is all about STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And tonight we have a fabulous group of folks who are ready to share all about their experience in this particular employment field. Our first panelist is a recent graduate, a nursing graduate, 2024 from Cal State University out of Northridge University. And this fabulous panelist name is Jenn Han. Everyone, please give a warm virtual welcome to our first panelist.
Hey everyone, thank you so much just for being here and hearing us out. My name is Jenn Han, and a little bit about my academic journey. So I actually originally went to undergraduate at the University of California, Los Angeles, where I got my bachelor's degree in 2021. And I graduated with a degree in molecular cell developmental biology. Then after that, I worked for about a year in inpatient cardiology. So I worked as a telemetry technician. So that basically consisted of monitoring and looking at patient what's called like ECGs or EKGs, working with nurses and doctors to care for patients in that way, particularly patients who have cardiac issues. So that was a fun time because it was right in the middle of COVID. So definitely learned a lot that way. And then after that, I ended up going to Cal State Northridge to get what's called an accelerated bachelor's of nursing. And so it's a 15-month program to get your BSN. And the reason it's so quick is because I already had a bachelor's degree in something else before. So it cuts out a lot of the prereq type stuff. And so kind of in that process, I always knew that I wanted to go into medicine. And that was always something on my mind, but I just wasn't totally sure in what capacity I wanted to serve. And so kind of in that gap year is where I really learned what my career goals really wanted to be. And so the ultimate goal is to go on to get my nurse practitioner license after this, and be a mid-level provider. And if you don't know what a nurse practitioner is they basically do everything that a physician does. They can prescribe, treat, diagnose patients. But right now, I just graduated nursing school. And so now I'm just studying for my licensing exam, and then I'll go on to work and see where I end up. But as for some of the challenges that I've faced as a blind person, I will say that there are fewer of us in medicine than I believe that than there should be. I feel that there needs to be an increase in us, in those of us who are in medicine, particularly those with disabilities. And so I'm hoping to be able to share this with you guys and to be able to advocate for that, because I've been a really strong proponent in that. And so kind of throughout the process of becoming a nurse in the last 15 months, it's been quite the journey. um, One thing I expected was obviously visual challenges in the industry, but to what degree I wasn't totally aware of until I actually started working in the field. And so in nursing school, you do go through what's called clinical rotations, where you get real world experience about what it's like to be a nurse. And so you go to the hospital or you go to different clinics and you work alongside nurses. And so you treat patients, you help them with various things, you work with doctors, you work alongside the nurse to be able to understand what they do, and you work in various units as well. So the first unit that I actually worked on was oncology, so cancer patients. And then the next unit I worked on is called medical surgical, which is kind of like a catch-all floor for various patients with various conditions. And then after that, you go on to acute care, which is the emergency department and the ICU. And then you go into work on outpatient settings, so things like primary care clinics, other specialty clinics as well. And then your last semester of nursing school, at least for my program, you do what's called an independent preceptorship. And that basically consists of there's no instructor anymore. It's just you and the nurse. There's no assignments, which kind of to me was a blessing. I was like, yes, no more care plans, which is basically really lengthy reports on different patients. But it was really just a time to be able to independently practice with your nurse working alongside you and to be really get a taste of what it's like to be truly in the nursing profession on your own. And that's just a time for you to be able to learn, grow as a student, grow as a future nurse as well. So I've definitely learned a lot in that regard, but I think one of the most challenging things for me as a blind person is implicit bias was a really, really big thing that I knew I was going to face, but I just wasn't sure what that looked like in the context of medicine. And so unfortunately, I did face a lot of discrimination in my program, and just in the industry as well. And so that's why I strongly believe that it's really important to advocate, raise your voice, start making some noise, because I believe that as blind people, we offer a really unique perspective in the industry of medicine. I think it's really, really, really sweet when patients look at you and they see you through themselves, right? Because they are also struggling with something chronic or something acute, and you, in a way, reflect that back to them. And so when patients see someone on their medical team who looks just like them, that's rare and that's really special. And so medicine to me is just such a special industry because it's a place where you meet someone at their most vulnerable and you're able to really help them in that way. And I believe that there's a saying that I once read, and it's a saying that says the currency of medicine is stories. And so every person in that room has a story. And it's remarkable to me because it's been such a humbling experience to step into this field, and to see that one person in one room is struggling with housing insecurity, and the next person in the other room has lived a life very well off and they've never known financial struggles in their entire life. And yet these two people are in the same situation. And so, unfortunately, we know that illness and disease are not biased to who they strike. And so the field of medicine is just such a special space to be able to impact somebody's story. And you, as a medical professional, are able to do that in a way that can either shape their story for the better or for the worse. And so, as a medical professional, it's our oath to impact someone's story for the better. And sometimes I've learned that sometimes you can't fix the immediate problem, but at the very least, you can make the remaining time worth living for and worth memorable. And so, beyond impacting your patient, you also impact family members as well in your direct care, and the community. And so it's a really awesome space to be able to advocate for things that you care about, public health issues that are prevalent in our society today, and also in general, the blind community. We see doctors all the time. And so it's an awesome thing to be able to be on the providing end, because I've lived my entire life being on the receiving end, going to doctor's appointments, getting my eyes checked, and so forth. And so now I'm able to be on the providing end where, people come to me for help and people come to me to get medical attention. And that's just an awesome, awesome thing. So that's me in a nutshell. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jen, and very powerful. And I'm sure that our participants are going to have quite a few questions for you. Thank you for that. Moving on to our second panelist, I would like everyone to welcome Kevin Sisco out of New Jersey. Kevin currently works as an entrepreneur and software developer. So everyone give a warm virtual welcome to Kevin.
Hello. I hope everybody can hear me okay. I just kind of unmuted myself. But I'm Kevin Sisco, as stated, and I have a much, well, not too much, but a shorter story than the last one you heard, that's for sure. But I didn't go to college. After high school, I actually wasn't 100% sure what I wanted to do. Um, I I didn't learn. Well, actually, I didn't learn until about the very end of my senior year that I wanted to go into the tech field, into computers. So after college, I went to a trade school called Satone Institute, and I got certified in computer programming with web technology. So I learned programming skills, and I learned how to develop web pages and that sort of thing. And right after that, I did a few programming jobs here and there. Um, I tried the college thing. I tried going to a county college around here, and I realized it wasn't for me. I stuck it out for for as long as I could, and didn't work out. So I left, and I said to myself, I need to kind of follow my passion and walk the path less traveled. And so I started working. There were no programming jobs at the time, so I started working in IT in the security realm, removing viruses and spyware. And at some point along the way, I ended up on a local radio station where I talked on the morning show about how to keep secure and how to protect yourself online. And that ended because the station unfortunately changed hands, and there were some issues with that. But I still continued to work, and then I went into at the same time. I went into podcasting, and I did some podcasting about technology and so forth. At the same time, doing a lot of IT, helping people get connected to the internet, um, basically solving issues that people were having with their network. I had a client who was hacked into. I had to deal with that issue, and now I focus mainly on programming, namely computer game development, computer games that can be played by the whole family, including the blind and visually impaired. And I want to show that, it's not just a blindness thing. The whole family can enjoy these activities, and so I want to spread awareness about that, and that brings us really up to speed, and that's my story.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Kevin, for sharing. And I just want to say that I think it's important to note that your story is important, especially around your experience with attending college and giving it a go, and then exploring a different avenue as it relates to your career, because everyone's career and journey will look different. So I think it's important to note that every journey is not the same, and people can find success. You just got to figure out your own lane. So I really appreciate you sharing your story with us this evening.
Absolutely.
All right. And finally, last but not least, we have our final panelist, Mr. David Hertweck out of, oh my gosh, I will tell you in 1 second. I have to actually look at my notes. Out of Missouri, who works as a senior principal engineer for Bausch Lomb. So welcome, David. We're happy to have you. David, is your audio working? Okay. I think David is still having some audio issues. So while we try to figure out what's happening with David's audio, we will move on to some of the questions that I have for the panelists. And David, if you are able to unmute and get back on, I'll definitely absolutely give you the opportunity to share about your career journey. Okay, so let's see. All right, so my first question, and either Jenn, Kevin, either one of you can answer, both of you can answer. Just feel free to hop on in there. Are there any skills that you've developed because of your blindness that you can, which have been, excuse me, let me ask this again. Are there any skills or strengths that you have developed because of your blindness that have helped you find success in your career? Oh, David, is that you?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, that's David, right?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, perfect. Okay, so we'll hold off on that question. David, I just introduced you, so you have the floor. You can tell us about your career journey.
Yeah, sorry about that. You know, an engineer that can't get a computer to work, so I apologize for that.
No worries, no worries. It's all good.
Okay, so Dave Hertweck, it's great to hear a lot of young people out there, but I'm kind of older. I did my college work, graduated from Washington University here in St. Louis way back in '86. Very little technology back at the time. Used plastic, braille embossed books for. I got my undergraduate degree in mathematics, so did old time braille for mathematics. I left there and worked for university for 10 years, running a research lab. And at that time, while I was working for the university, I got my master's degree in computer science and left the university in '98 and went with a startup company for a couple of years that didn't start up. We did monitoring of large scale oil pipelines. We planted these little mini computers along the oil pipeline, and they called home and told people how the pipeline was doing. Doesn't seem very advanced, but back in '98, putting little miniature computers on the internet was groundbreaking. Then left there and been at Bausch and Lomb since 2000, so been there 24 years. And kind of a different aspect for the blind community, even though I'm blind. I design medical equipment for ophthalmic surgery. And our equipment is used for, a big portion is used for cataract removal. Another portion of it is used for back of the eye diseases like detached retinas, diabetic retinopathy. People have problems with their vitreous or bleeding in the back of their eye. Get to play with all sorts of fun stuff, you know, lasers, ultrasound, lots of math, but it's been a lot of fun over the year. You know, going to as the lady that said as a nurse, going into an OR and seeing something you designed, helping somebody else see better is why I'm still there. Use a lot of technology to keep me going now that we have the benefits of all this cool stuff. You know, work out in the lab, work with all sorts of the most fun part is I get to work with lots of other engineers, electrical engineers, mechanical engineers, system engineers. And together we put these systems together and we have a factory on site that builds them and we ship these systems all over the world. And, you know, big advocate for the STEM field because, you know, now with when I broke into it way back in the '88s, there was hardly any access technology. And nowadays with the plethora of things that are out there, it's just, I think the doors are open wide for people to get into these fields. It's a lot of work, as I'm sure the people that you know went to college and did all the work to get there, especially through nursing school. I was horrible in biology, but to each their own. And we need biologists and so forth. I am blessed with 5 kids and 4 grandkids, and it's been a lot of fun. And you know, if anybody has questions about engineering or STEM, I'm always happy to help and share some of the things I've learned over the, I hate to say it, 40-year career. So that's kind of me in a nutshell.
Awesome. Thank you, David. And listen, don't 40 years is a blessing. Absolutely. And I will say I really appreciate that all of our panelists, all of you all are at different stages in your career and can speak from 3 different perspectives. I think that's really important to note. So we appreciate the 40-year career that you've had, and you've helped to pave the way for folks who are looking to break into the STEM field now. So thank you for all of the work that you've done in your career. That's a proud moment. Should be very proud of 40 years. So thank you all panelists for all of your stories. I really appreciate hearing about each of your journeys and experiences and how different they are, but yet they're connected in a lot of ways. And I'm sure we'll really get into the connections as we go through these questions. So I'm actually going to change my question from the original question that I had. So my first question is, I personally can speak as someone who has been blind their entire life and somewhat being deterred, right, from going into or not even it being an option, right? Let's not even say deterred, it being an option to explore a career in STEM. So for you all, you decided, regardless of other people's perceptions, that you would take that step and find a lucrative career in this field. So how did you deal with others' misconceptions around you being able to do your job as a blind person?
Well,
It's Kevin Sisco. Oh,
if I may add to that really quick, I've been kind of a geek my whole life. When I was 6, I remember getting up middle of the night and watching the Apollo missions and all that. But I'd like to share one thing that happened to me that changed my life. Freshman in college, taking second semester chemistry. The professor, it had a lab. This is, gosh, I was 20 at the time, just a kid. Said, hey, I don't want a blind person in my lab. You take my class, I'm going to flunk you. So, pretty harsh words for a 19, 20-year-old kid. So I did drop the class. And then I vowed to myself I was never let that happen to me again. I wasn't going to be a chemist anyway. So, but it was a real wake-up call saying, hey, at that time there was little or no recourse. I mean, professors were kind of God. They did what they wanted, and but I think it was one of the best things that happened to me because I said, you know what, here on in, I'm going to do what I want to do, and instead of being a chemist, I became a mathematician. So.
Yeah, so it's Kevin Sisco here. I think I'll jump in. You asked, how do you deal with misconceptions? For me, it's about results. I mean, especially, being in the computer field, it's all about everything's 1, 0, true, false. So it's all about results. But also being an entrepreneur, it's about results. You really don't have to play a lot of politics. But, what I have to do is just go in there and prove them wrong. And if I could do the job, that's what mattered, really. And it really is as simple as that. I'd like to give you a whole story about it, but really, it's as simple as that. If you can do the work, you take away the excuses that people have to say, hey, what are you doing here? You're blind. We don't want you here. So that, for me, that's it. You just go up, you show up, and you do what needs to be done, and you do it right the first time, so that nobody questions you or say, "We're gonna get rid of that guy. We're gonna replace that guy," and you just do it.
Yeah, so for me, I had to learn to be really resourceful and creative. So when I first entered the nursing program, I made it very, very, very clear to the nursing board that I was blind. And I told them that. And, I know from experience that there are few of us in the industry. And so sometimes it's hard to sit in a room with 5 or 6 other people who ask you, okay, what can we do to help? And you don't really have an answer because you've never done this before. And so it's very much trial and error. And so I think that kind of when you're walking into this field, you have to be very realistic with yourself, but you also have to know that at the end of the day, you are the only one really cheering yourself on, and you have to have that grit and that resilience to be able to push through. Because people will tell you all the time, you can't do it, or why are you even in this industry, or how are you going to even get through it? And sometimes it's okay to not know the answer to those questions of how am I going to approach this problem. But I made it very clear it's not about making exceptions, it's about being creative. And so use what you currently have, the tool using your whole life, but also branch out. Don't be afraid to bounce ideas off of your family, your friends, your mentors, even yourself. Try something new. You never know what will work. And so for me, it was really just being very grounded in what I wanted. And knowing why I wanted it, and understanding the reason why I was really getting into this field in the first place, because it can be really deterring when people are constantly telling you what you can and can't do and trying to put you in a box. And yet, you're the one breaking down those walls in order to make a change. And so just being very firm about those things, and just also not being afraid to try new things, and like everyone else has said, prove them wrong, because that's what you're there to do.
I love that. And this idea of being resourceful and utilizing community, getting the job done, and then sometimes having to pivot and still ending up doing what you want to do. I think those are really the key takeaways from all that you all have shared. So thank you for that. So my next question is, and you all briefly touched on it a little bit during your presentations, but what types of access technology or alternative techniques do you use on a daily basis in your jobs or on your jobs?
Well, I guess I'll go first again. So you use whatever you need to use. Now, I know some people says, if you're totally blind or not, use Braille or whatever. I have a teeny little bit of sight left, so I use that. And I use enlargement, I use JAWS, I use NVDA. And there's some things that NVDA works great, some things that JAWS works great. I kind of view the iPhone as the access technology Swiss Army knife, because you can use that to aim at writing and recognize it, or aim it at a piece of equipment to read what's on the piece of equipment. Then as an engineer, I've designed my own stuff, like some scripts to access different tools that have hardware interfaces. So sometimes you have to be creative and think out of the box. And sometimes it doesn't matter how you get the job done, you get it done. And you just, sometimes you have to work longer, extra hours. And if you want to be, compete and have a great job, and everybody has to do that from time to time. So I second and third and fourth and fifth is thinking out of the box and being creative and using every one of your abilities.
Yeah, I let me just jump in again. It's Kevin Sisco. I want to add to that because yes, you need to think outside the box, and I agree with that 100%. And I want to add to that. Nobody's going to judge you for being creative and using what you need to use, doing what you need to do. Sometimes I need to develop special scripts and such, as a programmer, to do what I need to do at a certain task. And it needs to be done. If anything, people will be impressed. Now, they're even impressed by my screen reading software. They think, "Wow, that's great." I use NVDA. I used to use JAWS a while ago. To be honest with you, I got sick of paying for something when I could get basically the same thing for free. And been a Braille reader my whole life. There have been times when I've had to read off Braille, and you just do all of the above. And people see you as going above and beyond when you do that. So that's really very important. Don't shy away from that.
Yeah, so for me, it's very case specific, just because in the hospital you encounter so many different situations, and so it's you kind of have to be quick on your feet about it. But some general tools that I tend to use are I use a portable Zoom software because I was constantly moving from unit to unit and from hospital to hospital from different computers, and so it's a software, it's a screen reader software that you're able to carry around with you through a USB. And so when you go into any computer, you can just plug that USB in and it'll operate on like guest mode. So that was really, really helpful. And that software is called Supernova. And it's through the Dolphin USB, which it took me a while to find that software because I was like, I don't know if this like exists on the market. Like I need something portable, something easy, something that'll work for me. And so kind of to that end, uh, talk to people in the community, figure out if they have any ideas, because I didn't know about that software before until I actually really started reaching out and asking. And then on top of that, I also use handheld magnifier, digital magnifier to look at different like medication labels. And then I also use what's called like optic glasses. So they're like telescope glasses, and I got them custom made to suit my vision specifically. And so it helps you see things really far away without getting close. And so for me, I use those a lot for inserting IVs into patients, helping out with procedures, looking at, when I'm assessing a patient, looking at things, I just slip the glasses on and looking at things like, a wound, for example, assessing a wound and being able to look at it from a safe distance while also getting the visual information that I need. I do have a little bit of functional vision left, but not much. And so it's really just about, again, using what you currently have, and also don't underestimate the power of your other senses. So things like touch has been really, really helpful, especially in procedures and such. So
Thank you for that, everyone. And I really appreciated hearing that you all use a multitude of tools to help you, help you in your everyday routine at work. I think it's really important to have many tools in your toolkit. And I really, two things. I really liked what Kevin said about really leaning into those tools and not shying away. Like the tools that you use are your tools. And so use them. That's what's gonna help you. Don't try to fake it until you make it. If you know Braille is a primary tool that you use, then that's what you're going to use on your job. If you know using a screen reader or using any other type of access technology is going to help you, make sure to lean into that and use that. And I also, I'm sure all of you all, not just our three panelists, but I think us as blind people, I think because things are inaccessible, we're sometimes forced to become innovative and creative. And I think a lot of us are probably engineers by by nature, just because we're forced to kind of make things accessible in a world that's not necessarily accessible for us. So David, hearing you kind of talk about, you're an engineer, you sometimes have to get creative and create your own tools. I think many of us do that in our everyday lives. And
Yep.
I think, that's definitely a valuable skill to have. So my next question is, how has networking and having community help you to find success in your field?
I can take this one. We'll switch the order. So for me, it's been really, really helpful in the sense that you don't feel as alone in it. When I was talking with other medical professionals who are low vision or blind, I found that um, sometimes I was approaching it wrong. Sometimes I was hoping that I would talk to them in hopes of finding an answer to a current problem that I was dealing with. But the reality is that everyone's vision is different and everyone's story is different. And so their situation might not even match yours completely. Um, and so sometimes I would go away like feeling frustrated that okay, they seem to have a lot more functional vision than me, so they were perfectly fine with, for example, like being able to read the numbers on the blood pressure cuff or reading this label or whatnot. That so their situation didn't match mine exactly, and so sometimes that was frustrating. But you know, when you realize that okay, they may not necessarily share the same situation as you, but they definitely share in what it's like to be in that space as a low vision person or as a blind person in the medical field, paving a way. And so I think that there's a lot of value in that, in just community and, listening. And so for me, it's been really invaluable just to be able to sit with someone who really understands it day to day, who really gets it. And just to be able to talk with them and again also like use them as a soundboard to bounce my ideas off of and ask them, oh, like, what do you think of this, because they're in the field too, and they know the certain things that we have to navigate in terms of accommodations, like making sure that you're HIPAA compliant, respecting patient privacy, um, because when you're in that field, it's more than just you, it's also somebody's life at stake. And so you have to make sure that that your accommodation and what you're asking for is obviously within reason, but also is going to help you better care for your patient. And so it's been really awesome to be able to connect with other people and see how they do things differently than you, and also take ideas from them and tweak them a bit because again, not everybody's going to fit you specifically, and so that just comes with being creative.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go now. um, yeah, so using people as a sounding board definitely because we have to remember to approach networking the same way that sighted people do very much because when you go into an industry, your blindness, you understand your blindness is just merely a characteristic. When you're going into it, I don't go into it as a blind programmer. I go into it as a programmer, and then I say, hey, by the way, I'm blind. So I'm collaborating with people and say what are some tips and tricks, and then I can take that and use it, and then go back and figure out how I can adapt it to my needs, how I can utilize technology, accessibly and do it efficiently.
Yeah, good points. I kind I kind of went about it in a different way. Like I always been kind of I don't know, do it on my own type person. I remember as a kid going to the Missouri School for the Blind for summer school, and I don't know. Back then, I just didn't fit in for some reason. But I learned a few years ago about the NFB's Division of Engineering, the NFB's Division of Computer Science, and I wish I would have known about it years ago because I do think collaboration is important. But in most of my career, I didn't go that route. I kind of, I was the only blind engineer I knew until I, about 4 years ago, learned about the NFB and computer science and so forth. But I really think I want to be known as Dave the engineer, Dave the grandpa, not Dave the blind engineer or Dave the blind grandpa. But I do think there's a time and place where you collaborate with people. And for a lot of things, why reinvent the wheel? And just because I didn't do it most of my life, but I still think it's very important to reach out and collaborate, because if somebody has a better way to do it and they want to share it with you, that's awesome. And maybe along the lines, you learned a few things, and sharing it is the best way, collaboration.
Awesome. I love Dave the Grandpa. um, and you're right. I think it is, community is so important. And in a lot of cases, I think for many of us, sometimes we are the only blind people that we know of in our school, in our neighborhood, just in our community in general. And so we do get used to kind of doing things on our own, but when we realize there are others like us, it does open up a whole new world and resources for us to access. So I don't know, I think it's really powerful to know that there are other blind people who may be on the same path as you, or even a different path, but being able to connect with one another to help each other is really important. So thank you for that, everyone. My next question is, what unique challenges have you faced in your career, and how have you overcome those challenges? In any order, no particular order, y'all.
Well, I'll go. So back when I first started looking for a job back in the 80s, 88, 89, the interview would go great by phone. And then as soon as they met you in person, it was over. Lots and lots of rejection. Getting that first, and even for a sighted person, I tell my son who's looking for a job right now, he just graduated from college, the, the hardest thing you'll ever do in your life, whether you're blind or not, is find that first job. Lots of, sighted people, lots of rejection. Back in the late 80s, it was a ton of rejection, and, finally broke in, and you get a job, you do well, then you can kind of live or die by your reputation. But for me, the hardest part is I never had a lot of vision, but it is degenerative. And so when I take that next step down, you know, can't do something the same way again. Have to go back and be innovative and be creative. What I could do, a month ago, maybe I can't do this month in the same way. So I think for those of us that do have a degenerative condition, sometimes you just have to say, oh, well, back to the drawing board. Let's refigure this out. And, I think that's an area where collaboration people can really help.
I can go next. So for me, a unique challenge is that the field of nursing in particular can be very visually demanding. And so, when you step into this space, you kind of have to address the fact that you're going to be doing a lot of things that look different to what's usually done. And it's really just challenging the traditional beliefs held in nursing that have been held for years and years and years. And so it's unfortunate that sometimes when you go in and you do something different, people don't always like that. And so it's kind of what I mean by being realistic with yourself, is that particularly in this field, it was hard for me to be able to really feel at ease with everything, just because there was a lot of implicit bias and discrimination that I faced throughout my program, where professors would say, like, oh, we are questioning your ability to provide safe and competent care to your patient. And the only thing that was an issue for them was obviously the fact that I was blind. And when I asked them, okay, what proof is there, to demonstrate that, they couldn't come up with anything. there was no real proof. It's not like I made like a medical error or there was an issue at hand. And so it's really just about going into that space and realizing that, you are one of few kind of paving that way, and challenging those beliefs that have been held for so long, and really just going in it with an open mind, and understanding, really valuing the unique perspective that you hold, as a blind person, because again, like I've said, you've been a patient your whole life in a way, and so you get it, and so this is kind of metaphorical, but you see things that sighted people don't see. And so it's just paying attention to the value that you hold and what you can contribute and holding on to those things. And really just, again, going to this field, remembering why you're in it, and really just thinking outside the box in order to achieve what you want to achieve.
Kevin, did you want to take a shot at this question? If not, we can. Okay. All right. So, really quickly, we have a little bit of time. We're going to open the chat and open hand raising very quickly. We may be able to get at least 2 questions in before our time is up. And then I have one more question for our panelists. So, if our wonderful host Leah can open the chat, we have a hand raised. So if we could get that person unmuted. Please limit your question to 1 question, just because we want to make sure we respect everyone's time. So we're getting to you right now, so give us a second. I saw a hand raised. Oh, it says iPhone.
Yeah, I just sent a request to unmute to the iPhone with the hand raised.
Hi, iPhone.
Hi, my name is Tessa, and I don't know why mine keeps saying iPhone. Everything is clearly named Tessa, and yet it still pops up on Zoom as iPhone. So I do apologize for any inconvenience or any confusion there. My question is for Jenn. Okay, you just lowered my hand. Okay, cool. So my question is for Jenn. How did you get started in all of this, and what advice would you have for somebody that is completely blind like myself? I don't have any usable vision. I am definitely on the East Coast and kind of approaching early 40s to be 100% honest. So what would you suggest? I have taken vitals before using like a talking blood pressure cuff and things like that of my own and my mom, and my mom's a nurse, licensed practical nurse. So I just kind of wanted to know like the very basics of how someone like me could get started, or if you think that having no usable vision, not being able to read those labels like you were describing and things like that. So I just wanted to know if that was doable, or if that's a little lofty, or what. So just that's what I wanted to know, kind of how you got started in all this. So thank you very much for taking my question. I appreciate it.
Your name is Hessa, you said, right? Is that correct?
Tessa, yes, Tessa.
Okay, I didn't hear it. Okay, nice to meet you, Tessa. So yeah,
Nice. Thanks.
I got started really it started really in undergrad. When I was studying molecular bio, like I said, I knew I wanted to go into medicine. The original plan was actually to go to med school. That's why I took the gap year. But then I decided to go into nursing instead, just because it aligned more with my career goals. And so kind of how I got started is, to be honest, when I first entered the nursing program, I had very, very limited ideas of how I was going to get through it. And so it was really trial and error, like I said before. And so as for it's kind of just like when I approached the situation, I thought through it and I said, okay, what can I use currently to my ability, right? And you said that you don't have any functional vision at all. I would
Correct.
say it is possible, because I have a friend who is, I think she's like totally blind, and she's in med school right now. And so it is possible, but you have to understand that it might take you a little longer. Um, unfortunately. But at the end of the day, like, you will get to your goal. And just for like practical reasons. So for example, the medical record system is called Epic. That's one of the EMRs that we use to chart for patients. It's inaccessible for like screen
A
readers.
Dodge user, yeah.
Yeah, it's
Uh-huh.
inaccessible. And so what my friend has done, which I found really creative, and I've kind of dabbled into that as well, is she actually has someone write out. Well, she will actually, when she's with the patient, she will actually just type out on a document everything that she goes through with the patient, and then later on, someone else will actually input the information that she's typed out into the actual chart. Another friend of mine, for example, I think she's very clearly blind, and she is also in the medical industry. She has an assistant, and so that person helps her out, like reads her labels, helps her out with certain visual tasks. And so it's very doable. You just have to be, like I said, very creative, very uh, grounded in what you want. Don't underestimate the power of the accommodations provided to you through the ADA. So you can use like a human reader, for example. Um, Unfortunately for me, I fought for that, but my school, for whatever reason, did not allow it, which is a whole story.
I'm
Um,
sure it is. I'm sure it is.
yeah, that's a whole other story. But and so I kind of had to be creative with that. But again, it is doable. And so those are just two practical examples to keep it short.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that, Jen. And Tessa, thank you so much for your question. So we are almost at time, but I wanted to pose a final question to our panelists, and it's kind of a two-parter. So what advice would you give to our participants in the Zoom right now, or anyone who may be listening to this webinar who is interested in exploring a career in STEM? And then the second part of that is, what advice or what would you say to a counselor or teacher or even an employer when a blind candidate or consumer or student comes to them saying, I would like a job in STEM, or I would like to pursue a study in STEM, or whatever the case may be? What would you say to each of those groups?
All right, I'll go ahead. So what advice would I give? Well, I think if somebody wants to get in the STEM field, if someone is blind, visually impaired, I would say don't let your lack of vision hold you back. If this is something you're passionate about, then figure out a way to achieve that goal. And it may be, talking to other people in the field, doing some research on your own. And what's the first step? What's the second step? And going from there. And so that's the advice. Now, what would I say to a counselor? I would say the least you could do, the least anybody could do, is give that person a chance. Let them see what they can do. Let them show, let them prove themselves. And really, we do, as human beings, we do owe it to one another, to cut each other some slack and say, let's put them out there and let them try it out.
Thanks, Kevin. Anyone else want to answer before we close tonight?
I'd like to jump in real quick.
Go ahead.
What I would tell somebody young and stuff is, if you want to go into STEM, it's a lot of fun. And I've found through my career that once you get the knowledge and stuff, that people in science, technology, especially at universities, at least I found as engineers and so forth, are very, very open-minded. They don't really care how you do it as long as you do it and get it done. But you cannot be afraid of working if you want to go into STEM. You have to get buckled down and get the knowledge through coursework, colleges. If you don't do well in a college environment, do self-study or whatever it takes. But there's a core set of knowledge, basic math. I don't know about the medical fields, but engineering, you got to have calculus, you got to have differential equations. Those are some pretty scary things. But if it's something you want, make it happen. But don't be afraid to work. And what I tell a counselor, I think I'd reiterate, be open-minded. Give them a shot. Evaluate them as if they didn't have a vision disability. I interview a lot of people. I have a bunch of kids, younger people working for me on my team right now. They're just right out of college. And the way I get to know them is I give them a problem and see what questions they ask me. You can learn a lot about a person, but what questions they ask in return kind of gives you, like some are silly questions, some are not silly questions. No question's a bad question. And that's what I would encourage young people. Ask questions. I drove probably my college professor and my high school teachers questions. I don't get this. I don't get what a paraboloid is. I can't see a paraboloid. What's an ellipse? I don't understand. And then go in after school, work, and you get a good teacher. They want to put the time in if they find you're truly interested in their subject. But ask questions. Ask.
Yeah,
That's it.
to reiterate that as well. I guess that's advice to employers and counselors is don't be afraid to ask questions likewise back to us, back to whoever is hearing. Because you don't learn until you actually ask. And it's better that you ask something that you might be embarrassed to ask than to make an assumption, because that's where, problems start to arise. And so the more you know and the more you inform yourself, the better you both will be. And remember that you're the one who really sets the environment for that space. And so I encourage employers and counselors to really make sure that, anyone who is blind or low vision who comes into their workspace knows that they are valued and an integral part of their team. And then just advice for someone interested in pursuing STEM. I think two things. The first thing is that use what other people perceive as your greatest adversity as your biggest asset, because it is. And then the second thing is that the difference between someone who doesn't accomplish a goal and someone who does is that the latter person took the initiative. And that might sound really simple in practice, but it's hard to want to take that first step and get it done. But once you take that first step, you're halfway there, and so you get it done. And yeah, just remember to always remember your why.
Well said.
Well said. Well, Jenn, Kevin, David, I want to thank you for your time this evening. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences. I'm sure that you left many people on the Zoom ready to go out and see if STEM is the field that they want to explore for a career. So thank you all. Just a quick note that our next Where the Blind Work will be held on August 22nd. This will be all about remote work. So we'll have some panelists on giving us the deets and all the ins and outs of being a remote worker. So we hope to see you all there. And everyone, have a good night. Thank you.